Juarez.
Juarez. Your Honor, opposing counsel, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. One drink too many. One curve taken too fast. And one life taken too soon. That's why we're here in court today. We're here in court because the defendant, Danielle Dawson, was driving the victim Vanessa Sullivan's white Chevrolet Impala on September 24, 2010, and she crashed it while she was under the influence of alcohol, while she was driving 66 miles per hour on a 35 mile per hour road, and while weather conditions were downright terrible. I, along with my co-counsel, represent the people of Midlands. And what we intend to do today is prove beyond any reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty of murder and driving under the influence. Now let's talk about these charges specifically for a little bit. The charge of DUI. We need to prove that the defendant was, one, in operation of a motor vehicle. That's not in question today. That's been stipulated by both parties. And two, was under the influence of alcohol at the time. Now for the charge of murder, we need to prove that the defendant's actions caused the death of Vanessa Sullivan, and that she did so under conditions manifesting extreme indifference to the value of human life. In addition, we also have to prove that there was a substantial and unjustifiable risk. By the time this trial is over, we're confident that you will have heard all the testimony you need, considered any other evidence, that you will find the defendant guilty of these crimes. First, now let's talk about what happened that night. September 24, 2010. A few days before, the victim, Vanessa Sullivan, had made plans with her best friend to celebrate her 21st birthday at Chuggy Sports Bar in Midland Center. The defendant overheard the plans to go to the bar and decided to tag along. She was supposed to meet the two at the bar at around 7 p.m., but got there at 2 o'clock. Now we can trace everything that happened that night at 2 o'clock, down to 2 o'clock. At 2 o'clock, the defendant had the first of what would ultimately be too many drinks. By the time that Vanessa and her best friend Taylor got to the bar, the defendant had consumed at least 6 drinks. In the time that the band began to play, she consumed an additional 3 drinks. By the time the band had finished playing, 3 more drinks. That's a total of 12 drinks, ladies and gentlemen. The defendant, the record will show, actually agreed to be the designated driver that evening. A designated driver that had 12 drinks. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to hear about why the defendant was in such a hurry that night. Taylor Hopkins is going to take the stand, and she's going to tell you that the defendant was aware that Vanessa Sullivan had a curfew. 15 minutes before Vanessa Sullivan was supposed to be home, the defendant said, "Challenge accepted," to making the 20-minute drive in 10 minutes. To better understand this case, you're going to hear about what the weather conditions were like that night. You're going to hear from Officer Foster. He's going to tell you that at 1 a.m., the time that the defendant was driving on the road, the defendant was driving in a torrential downpour. He's going to tell you when he arrived to the scene of the crash, he conducted 3 field sobriety tests on the defendant. A horizontal gaze nystagmus test, measuring the nystagmus of the eye, how much the eye jitters. A one-legged standing test, measuring the coordination of the victim, or the suspect. And a heel-to-toe test. And he's going to tell you that the defendant failed all 3 tests. Ladies and gentlemen, we are confident that by the time this trial is over, you'll have heard everything you needed to hear. You'll consider everything. You'll be convinced beyond any reasonable doubt. But let's touch on what any reasonable doubt means. It's not some sort of unobtainable bar that the defense will likely have you try to convince you of. The bar can be reached. All it means is if our arguments make sense, and they will, then you'll have to find that the defendant is guilty of murder and DUI. Because Vanessa Sullivan can't be here with us today. She can't go to law school like she had planned. She can't spend another Christmas with her family. And it's because of the defendant's decision to have 1 too many drinks, take 1 curve too quickly, take one life too soon that we're here. Find the defendant guilty of murder and driving under the influence.
Thank you.